Thank you, Adam, and thank you everyone for joining. As Adam said, my name is Maurice Turner, and I'll be sharing with you some free and low-cost cybersecurity resources that you can get access to. I like to start right at the top by saying all this information is going to be available on the USC website. So you don't have to write down every URL, just keep in mind what is important for you and make a note to take a look at it later. The first resource that I'd like to offer is the one that I think is the best one to start off with. That's the Telework Best Practices. This was put together by the federal government as Telework Essentials Toolkit. This started back when everyone was working from home during COVID. And now, as folks are going back into the office or perhaps engaging in a hybrid format for how they work, it's important to remember to be as safe and secure as possible. These resources are targeted at the 3 different kinds of workers at a typical organization. It covers information for executive leaders, IT professionals, and teleworkers. This is recognition that these different kinds of workers play a different role in keeping the organization safe and secure. That's why I like it. It's specific and it gets to the high-level information that you need to start the conversations about how to make these different areas of an organization more secure. Next, I'll call your attention to an expert roundtable report. This is a roundtable that was supported by Google by bringing together digital security and US political campaign staff. What I like most about this report is that it's a frank discussion of how to balance those options of security and operations to make sure that you can actually get your work done. It's not quite as easy as saying, turn on all of the security that's available all the time. That's really just going to slow you down, and it might be preventing you from getting work done. So this roundtable report offers that frank discussion so that you can get a heads up about what it's like to actually go through the decision-making process to figure out which tools, products, and services are going to work best for your place and your time. We just heard from Kim at CISA. They offer specific campaign checklists so that at a high level, campaigns know exactly where they should start. This information should look familiar. Cliff went over a lot of it. And even though it might seem like it's redundant or even basic for some folks, it's realistic to understand that not everyone has heard of these straightforward foundational elements of security before. So this checklist is great for any campaign, large or small, as a great starting point to make sure that they have a strong foundation of security to help prevent some of those basic and even sophisticated attacks that might be coming their way. Next, DHS offers another toolkit. This one is specifically for state and local officials. This gets into the specifics of what kind of risks those particular organizations are going to face. So if you're a state or a local official, you can work through step by step to assess your own individual risk profile and what might work best in your situation. Here we have election security preparedness resources from the EAC. This is, again, tailored specifically to those state and local election officials, and it gets to the operational level of what needs to be considered in order to improve security in the administration of elections. It goes over the detailed administrative aspects of an election, like performing self-assessments or doing an evaluation for non-voting election technologies. This is also helpful information for anyone in the community or even journalists who are curious about how elections are run. So much of the confusion that's going on today and some of the misinformation and disinformation comes from a fundamental lack of understanding of how elections are supposed to be run. It's not all happening on election night. These operations are going on year-round, months before any ballots are printed or any votes are cast. So it's a great place to learn about how elections work. At the heart of all of our election discussion, we need to figure out who are the trusted sources of information. And here's one that I'd like to go to. This is from the National Association of Secretaries of State. They have a campaign called Trusted Info 2022. The idea is that we should all be looking to our local election officials as our trusted sources of election information. This hashtag is meant to raise awareness about that fact so that we know that we can start from the same base of information and talk from the same facts and be able to move the conversation forward without the distractions of mis and disinformation and some of the negative impacts that might happen there. The Defending Digital Campaigns organization offers free cybersecurity assistance for House and Senate campaigns. This assistance is nonpartisan and independent. These free and reduced price products are also critically available, and they are treated as not treated as in-kind donations per the FEC. This is especially important when thinking about how best to secure those large races such as House and Senate campaigns. For other non-House and Senate campaigns, I suggest you take a look at the Global Cyber Alliance. They've put together a vendor-agnostic, standards-based toolkit and resources for elections and journalists. Now, you've heard me talk about a toolkit before. It analyzes the risk and provides an assessment. Well, this is one for journalists. They can go step by step to figure out what is their particular risk profile and try to match it up with products or services that might be best to mitigate those risks. The Cyber Readiness Institute is a multi-sector global partnership that provides free starter kits to small and medium-sized businesses. Now, you might be asking yourself, what does a small and medium-sized business have to do with elections? Well, if you consider that most campaigns really look like a small or medium-sized business, then it makes perfect sense. What I like about the Institute is that their information is geared toward having those conversations with employees about the employee's role in playing a big part in keeping an organization safe. So if you're looking for ways to start that conversation and help employees or volunteers on a campaign understand the role that they play in keeping that campaign secure, this is a great place to start. Next, I'm going to tell you about Google and their Advanced Protection Program. This is Google's strongest security offering, and it's specifically for those folks who have been identified as being at elevated risk of sophisticated or the folks that are highly targeted on online attacks. It's going to be people like advocates, campaigns, and journalists. Now, this is protection that Google offers when they identify folks who fit into that role, and it's continuously updated, and Google continuously monitors any activities that are targeting these folks. Microsoft offers a similar kind of program called Account Guard. This is specifically for those folks who are in the political space. Again, it's protections for email, files, and things like that to make sure that whatever activity you're working on, however you're running your campaign in the cloud, it's as protected as possible. Now, for the rest of us who might not be in that kind of a role and qualify for that kind of protection, we might be on social media. And Facebook has a similar program that is called Facebook Protect. Again, extra monitoring, extra layers of security. Now, it requires a bit more work, like enabling two-factor authentication and other aspects of security, but that extra friction is worth it. It reduces the likelihood of account takeovers and impersonation that can be critical in leading to opportunities for misinformation or disinformation, especially as we get closer to election day. On Twitter's page, they offer specific information about what they're doing to help protect government officials and other local election officials when they're on the platform. The idea here is that making sure that when you see a tweet or you see information coming through Twitter, it's going to be authentic and reduce the likelihood that it's going to be misinformation or disinformation due to an account takeover. TikTok is typically going to be a place where you might find some funny videos or some helpful tips. But as we get closer to election day, there's probably going to be an increase in conversations around politics and being involved. So They offer educational videos for the community to learn about media literacy and to figure out how to be a little bit more critical about the information that you read on the platform. Now I'm going to go through a few more free tools and resources. I'll highlight one or two as I go through the list. And remember, all of these are going to be available on the website after the presentation. So when I'm doing research, I want to make sure that I'm getting as close to the source as possible. And one of the ways that I do that when I'm looking at social media accounts is I take a look at the Hamilton dashboard. This provides an analysis of authoritarian regimes like China or Russia and how they use social media accounts to help undermine democracies like in the US. So the Alliance for Security and Democracy put together this dashboard as a way to identify some of those accounts and track some of those narratives. This is an especially important source for journalists who are doing research in this area. Next, when I come across a story that I think might be too good to be true, I like to go to FactCheckorg. Typically for a bigger news story that's made the national press, there's going to be a couple of sides to the issue, and I find myself trying to figure out, okay, what's real, what's commentary, what's opinion, and what's just flat out wrong. So the folks at FactCheckorg have gone through all of that work to evaluate the claims and give some better insight into just how trustworthy those claims are. When it comes to misinformation and disinformation, I think that educating users is by far one of the most effective tools to prevent the spread and the undermining of democracy by going down this route. So I advocate for anyone who's interested in trying to inform users to take a look at these guides from the Department of Homeland Security, because it's more of a visual reference and it shows just how everyone can play a role in recognizing this kind of information and how to stop the spread of it. So take a look and see what you learn. We're getting close to the end, so I'm going to cover just a few of these federal policies because we've heard from Kim earlier about the designation of elections as being critical infrastructure. The federal government is trying a multi-pronged approach to make sure that the critical infrastructure is in place and it's fortified so that there isn't any interruption into our election process. One of the ways that they've done that is by encouraging good faith research. You've heard me talk a lot about people and where they are in this process. One of those groups of people that are important to the security process are good faith researchers. It's so important that the Department of Justice put out a memo encouraging good faith research. So you might find yourself in a situation where you're running a particular piece of election infrastructure and someone contacts you saying that there's a vulnerability. We definitely want to encourage that good faith disclosure of vulnerabilities. And sometimes that comes from independent researchers or it comes from educational institutions. So if you can, try to build a good relationship with those researchers that are reaching out because they might be helping you find vulnerabilities in your system. And that's the first step to making sure that those vulnerabilities get patched before a malicious actor tries to take it over. And with that, I'd like to say thank you for your time and your attention today. You can find all the links on the USC website, and I'll leave you with what I think is probably the best slogan I've heard. Our candidate is democracy, and I couldn't feel more strongly about it, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, and back to you, Adam.